bit. So if you want to start now, great.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nisha Mody. My pronouns are she, her. I work at the Biomedical Library, most of the time, not lately, but that's usually where I sit. And I'm a health and life sciences librarian, liaison for the medical school, graduate medical education in the hospital for physicians. And yeah, today we're going to talk about systematic reviews and working with librarians in that process, what a systematic review is. And here I put my email and the general sciences libraries. When we say sciences, for us, it represents two physical spaces, the science and engineering library and the biomedical library. We're a team, we all work together, and we have a general email. So if for whatever reason you can't get a hold of me or I'm out of the office, that's a really good email to start with, especially if maybe you just need access to an article, having trouble getting it. That's something that someone on that end can easily answer that question. So you're always welcome to email me, but that's also a very good email to have as well. So today we're just going to talk about different review types and the stages of a systematic review. We're also going to briefly talk about PRISMA and what that means in terms of protocol and reporting, and then also talk about librarians as partners. And I'll be switching between this and some websites for you to see as well. And feel free in between, if I'll keep looking at the chat, but I feel like the group is small enough that if you do have questions in between, I'm happy to answer, but I'll definitely have time at the end to answer them as well. So this website, which I'm going to go to in a second, has a really good chart that's taken from this citation here, A Typology of Reviews, an analysis of 14 review types and associated methodologies. That talks about what different review types are. Sometimes people come to us saying they want to do a systematic review, and we end up finding out that maybe they want to do a scoping review. And that's something you could see here, a few visualizations. And a scoping review is just to see how much research is out there on a specific topic or research question. Sometimes it just ends up being a meta-analysis, and it's not necessarily a systematic review, but it's something that requires a meta-analysis. Other times it could be a mapping review, mapping different categories that something can belong to. And I'm going to show that guide in a second. But systematic really just means a systematic search for appraise and synthesis research evidence, to systematically search for it and adhering to guidelines on the conduct of a review. So you can research something systematically, in terms of how you do it, but it's not necessarily considered a systematic review. So I'm gonna stop this share really quick and then share that website. So this is our systematic review guide, which has a lot of helpful information, things I'll probably mention today. And when you go to types of literature reviews and this menu on the left-hand side, you will see and I know this is kind of small, I'll try to zoom in a little more, a really good chart that takes from this article what different review types are, describes them. It shows what the search process is and the appraisal process, etc. So it shows how, you could do a mapping review, you could have a mixed methods review, you could have a qualitative systematic review, a rapid review, which is basically a really quick systematic review. So I really suggest going through this and looking to see what you want to do, because if you're very tight on time, a rapid review might be more effective for you in terms of what you're doing, and it's still something you can publish. So I think this is really helpful in terms of understanding those differences. So like I said, oftentimes, people come to us and they want to do a systematic review and realize there's certain limitations in terms of what they can and can't do, and I'm going to talk about that a second here for what that can mean. Okay, you see the presentation again, right? Okay. So I just made a chart to kind of show what a systematic review is versus not a systematic review. So a systematic review has to be more than one person on the team besides a librarian if you are using a librarian for the search purposes. And this is to reduce the bias, especially when you do your first search, when you get a bunch of search results, say you get like 5,000 citations. You go through a title and abstract review typically, and in the next slide, I'll go through more of what the process can look like. But you want to have another person's eye on those to, to reduce the bias. Like maybe you think one thing, but someone else doesn't think one thing. And even better is to have a third person as a tiebreaker. But yeah, so if you want to do something solo, it could be a systematic search, and but it's not going to be a systematic review because it has that element of bias. The other thing, and I'm going to kind of go from left to right, is that a protocol is prepared beforehand and that you publish it if you can, and I'll show you where you can do that. It's really important that you have a protocol set for what you want to review. Sometimes people will change, their inclusion criteria, their exclusion criteria, switch their research question up, and then it's just kind of like you're still trying to figure out what you want to research. So once you have a good idea, after doing a good amount of research on your own for your research question, then you can really get started in the process. So, not a systematic review is changing it after it's set or not having one at all. And then for a systematic review, you want to use at least 2 databases to search, and these can be any relevant databases for your search. So it could be PubMed, it can be Embase, if you're searching for something that's more psychologically related. PsycInfo is a database we have. If you are looking into things about medical education, we have ERIC, which is an education database. So at least 2, if not more, if that's helpful for you. And not a systematic review is saying, I'm only going to look at PubMed, because then it's database bias. That's only what's in that database. And oftentimes what's in PubMed, Embase, Web of Science all have a core database called Medline, but they also have a lot of other publications and that are in their database too. So you will find a lot of duplicates, but if you want to do a systematic review, it's being extremely thorough, knowing that you did everything you could to find all the research you can. And then systematic searching itself is using controlled vocabulary. So essentially controlled vocabulary, some of you may or may not be familiar with mesh terms. These are basically the hashtags of databases. Mesh is specifically for PubMed. Embase has terms called Mtree. And sometimes it's just what's their controlled vocabulary. So this controlled vocabulary is like very much a library term, but it's basically how we are categorizing articles. And it's important because sometimes in PubMed, for example, you'll see a title, but you won't see an abstract, So if mesh terms are assigned, and mesh terms are not always assigned into articles, but if mesh terms are assigned, it can really be helpful for finding things that don't have an abstract, to be, once again, very thorough. So you want to use the mesh terms and the keywords. And I'm just gonna really quickly, maybe just hop into PubMed to show what I mean. Okay, so as you can see, I just did a search for just diabetes, just as like you would Google it or something, right? So the reason we want to use mesh terms is because PubMed does something where it's called automatic term mapping, where it maps a term you use into the mesh. It maps it to mesh terms. So if I go to advanced, right underneath the search bar, you will see, first of all, this saved searches, I believe, for the last 8 hours. So it's really helpful, especially if you start going down rabbit holes, to know that previous searches are always saved here. I also suggest creating a My NCBI account. You could see I'm logged in. You could save searches that way too. So if you see this little caret next to the diabetes search, you're actually seeing what happened. When I searched for diabetes, it looked for all these different terms. So it mapped it to diabetes mellitus, but also mapped it to insipidus. So if you are only looking for one type, for example, then it's going to start searching for other types. This is why we want to use controlled vocabulary, to avoid all this happening, because I've seen systematic reviews where people are just using keywords and it's not controlling what they're getting. They're getting a lot of extra things, and they're also probably excluding things too that don't map to certain terms. That's why thinking of all the synonyms in the world is helpful. This does not work like Google, where it has that type of algorithm to know all that information. That's not how these databases work. So that's one thing I wanted to show, because if I, for example, I'm just going to grab this really quick. Put this here and add it to the history. You can just add things to history here instead of saying search, because when you do search, it goes to the main search screen. But if you just want to kind of see, you could see this cut this almost in half. I think someone has their hand up. I didn't know if someone wanted to ask a question.
Oh yeah, I was just asking. So I see that, these diabetes or diabetes mellitus or all these other synonyms for diabetes. If you wanted to search something that was like food and diabetes or diabetes mellitus, like
Mhm.
would you just put the ors in parentheses?
So if I did like this, or like food, is that what you're saying?
But I
Right.
want like the food to be included, if that makes sense. It would be like food and
Yeah.
the diabetes or all the other synonyms, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So one thing we show is or is more. So you use or for synonyms and to combine concepts. So I'm just gonna do like a quick Google search. So for example, we're looking at peanut butter and jelly. When you'd use it will find things that have the peanut butter and the jelly, right? If you use or, it's going to find everything. So that includes things only with peanut butter and things only with jelly. You can also do not to exclude things. I feel like for systematic reviews, we usually don't use not unless we're excluding animals, which I'll get to at the end. But that's what you do. So you want to use or for synonyms. So you could do what I would do here is I would do diabetes, and then I would do or diabetes like that. And then I would do TW, which is what we do to just look at keyword terms and not look at like the author's affiliation with their university. It really looks at the title and the abstract essentially, to make sure you're getting articles that don't have mesh terms assigned, because mesh terms are, first of all, they're not assigned to everything in PubMed. I think 70%, or I forget exactly what the percentage was, but also the newest articles are not tagged right away. They could take 6, even up to 18 months for them to get in there. This is why you want to use keywords. But I would do that and then do and food and then or, and I'm not putting the brackets after, but I'm just showing for the purpose of showing and versus or sugar, if you're considering those as synonyms, right? And yeah, so you want to have this in parentheses and then these in parentheses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and sorry for the additional follow-up, but
Okay.
why would you do the TW versus the mesh terms again? Like, can you
Sure. Yeah, this is what I'll show you. So if I go to this term, this right here, these results, it always usually does it by best match, which is like a relevance search. You can change it to most recent if you want the most recent research. So if I'm just going to go into a record to show you, we'll see what this has. So it has all this author affiliation, abstract references. See, there are no mesh terms on this article. That's why. So we are missing articles, but it got it because it looked at keywords too. So for something to have a mesh term, I'll show you what it looks like. I'm actually going to do relevancy search because usually that shows mesh term stuff first. As I scroll down, you see all these mesh terms are here. So the other one didn't have it, but if you want to do a systematic search, you want to make sure that you include keywords or else you're going to be missing out. Okay, cool. I see your thumbs up, so we're good. So yeah, this is what I wanted to show you, that basically, and this is also a really good way to find other terms, other mesh terms that might be relevant potentially for synonyms, etc. It's also helpful if you click on one of these, you can search this in MESH itself to see what it means. And I think this is helpful, not just for systematic reviews, but for whenever you're doing your searches. If you want to just do keyword searches without the MESH terms or just do like diabetes straight, you can. It's not that you can't, but I'm really talking about doing very focused research. So this is the MESH database where we can actually look at what we're researching. So first of all, it defines what it is. You can use subheadings to dig in. I don't recommend doing that for a systematic review unless there's something very specific that you want. And then you can also see how it's categorized in the taxonomy that there is within the MESH database. Sometimes you could just call these trees. Sometimes there's one tree, this has 3 trees. And this is helpful to see what's underneath it and what's above it in case you feel like you want to get more specific or more broad. The other day I was looking at health equity for someone, and one thing that was interesting that we found out was that, first of all, not all of them say this, like Insipidus didn't say that, but this was introduced in 2016, this term. So nothing before 2016 has health equity as a MESH term. But we can see here, health service accessibility is above it. And then that person was like, oh, I actually want that, you know? And when you search for a MESH term, it automatically does what we call explodes for everything below it in the tree. You can stop that by clicking this checkbox here. Do not include MESH terms found below this term in the hierarchy. Now for health equity, there's nothing below it, so you'll only get that. But when I do a systematic review, I always don't explode so that I can control term by term. And then if I want to take things out, I know I'm not like messing with what's below it in the hierarchy too. So this is something that if you decided not to use a librarian for whatever reason, time, whatever it is, we would show you how to do this very specifically. But if you did, then we could actually do that, which I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, so I just want to explain why it's important and how this works, essentially, and also to know that it's also really important to look at how things are previously indexed. One example I show that also shows bias in health information is that transgender persons wasn't a MESH term until 2013, and then usually if it's in parentheses, 2016 means that the definition or something was updated. But before that, you could see previous indexing, it was transsexualism. So if you wanted to look at articles about transgender individuals or research about that, you want to also include this term, even though it's most, especially trans activists, choose not to use this term. But if you want to look at research before 2013, you have to use that as a term. Does that make sense? And I also like to show this to just show how, slow some of this stuff can be, unfortunately, when it comes to especially socioeconomic terms. Like I said, health equity didn't exist until 2016, which is really disappointing to me, but that's what it is. So this is why it's really important to be systematic. And I think that also adds a layer of equity. Just looking at the chat. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll hop back to the presentation unless anyone else has. I can also answer questions at the end, but if anyone has any other more direct questions about this. Okay, cool. Okay, so here's a helpful, I know it looks busy, but process of what a systematic review can look like. And so you could see here, these people are represented by these figures. In bluish purple is the researcher, and this more magenta is, or fuchsia, I guess, is librarian, and green is the statistician, if you choose to use one. So right here, you see the researcher formulates the question. So this is the preparation. And so this whole thing can be very long. This step one, it could be writing the protocol, understanding, doing maybe a quick search, a few or several searches to see what's out there. Also seeing if existing systematic reviews already are out there on your specific topic. It could be that someone did a systematic review on the topic you want to do, but it was in 2005. So you could do an update. You can look at the terms they used and do an update using those exact terms, or you can refine them as well. And then the librarian can search for the systematic review that answers, or they can also search for other systematic reviews to answer that question. Oh, oops, sorry. And then there's writing the protocol. So yeah, sorry, I skipped that. So you can get a librarian's help to make sure that there are no other systematic reviews. And then you can write the protocol. So provide an objective, make sure it's reproducible, the methodology is sound, et cetera. And then the librarian helps to devise a search strategy. We usually always start with PubMed, and then we translate whatever that long search string is to other databases. And then we do the search and then remove any identical citations from multiple databases so that you don't have to deduplicate them. And then the research team will look at the abstracts and titles to remove anything that's not relevant. And then after they have a smaller subset, they can get the full text of those, where you can get that from our website, or if we don't have access to those journals, you can request them through interlibrary loan, which usually isn't a problem. It's pretty fast. We say 5 to 7 business days, but it's honestly often sometimes within a day or two you can get articles. So if you ever hit a paywall or see that we don't have access to something, know that you can request things through interlibrary loan for free. So just so you know, if you didn't know that before, it's really helpful so that you can get access to articles. The only thing that we don't, like sometimes people have, like we have Embase and PubMed. We do not have Scopus. A lot of people like Scopus. So there's various databases we might not have. So if you're at another institution or you're doing something at a systematic review at someone else's institution, you have to decide kind of like who you're going to work with essentially, which I know because like people do research across institutions as well. Then you screen the full text to take out even more to decide how many research articles actually fit. And then you can do what you call snowballs. So you can also look at the citations from the titles that you do like to see what else might be relevant for you. You can look at those citations, and you could also do forward citation searching, where you can go into even like Google Scholar. You can also do this in Web of Science to see who cited an article in the future, a specific article that you are interested in that looks really good. Then depending on if it's a qualitative or quantitative one, you extract the data, synthesize it. You can repeat the search to find new literature published since the initial search, depending on how much time goes by. But usually in the protocol, you will say that I want this until January 2021, and then that's it. So that's something that should be set in the protocol beforehand. Then you could do any meta-analysis if you are choosing. You don't have to do a meta-analysis depending on what the search is, and then you produce and publish it. Are there any questions about this process itself? I know it's a lot, but. Okay.
Great visual, thank you. That was
no
very
problem.
clear.
Yeah, no problem. Great. So PRISMA is the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. That's what it stands for. So I really encourage going to the PRISMA site. It's really, really helpful and has a very helpful checklist that I just saw was updated in 2020. I was in a different role in 2020 for like almost a year. So I wasn't really doing systematic reviews or anything. So I just saw yesterday when I was prepping for this, that in 2020, they updated the checklist from 2015. So I think it's always helpful to look at the updated items. Reporting helps authors develop and maintain direction and helps reviewers and researchers critically appraise the final review. Are you still seeing my screen? Okay. I just got some weird notification. And it's basically the framework for your published review. So I'm gonna stop my share again and just go to the site. I think I missed this earlier, but it's a PowerPoint. Okay, yeah, cool. So you can hear this is the PRISMA site, prisma-statement.org. You can go here for the different checklists and a flow diagram, which you would have to include within your final article. I actually think that, let's see. I have the checklist here, so I could show you what the checklist looks like. So this shows, like, based on each section, what to make sure to do, which is really, really helpful. So let's see, there were 17 items in the previous checklist. So now there's more. So it's definitely added and expanded upon it. So there's 27. So they really did add to this. And I honestly have not had a full chance to look through all of this, but it may have been that things were combined and they wanted to make sure things were separated. But this is a really helpful checklist to have. Okay. And then there's also the PRISMA-P, which is helps to develop protocols as well. So you can see here, this is the type of information when you create your protocol that's really helpful to have. There's also Prospero, which is a place where you can look for existing protocols, which is really helpful. This is why I suggest if you create a protocol that you look up for them. And you can see here, there's already ones that are for COVID-19 for obvious reasons. They've highlighted that to see if there's any existing protocols. And you can also see, what's been done before. And you can register a review, which I suggest, because then you're just helping the scholarly community find the research you've done. Sometimes there's a starting for the protocol, and then there's more to do once you've published it. I feel like oftentimes people forget to kind of do that last part, but I do think it's always best to have it as thorough as possible if you're able. So it says it accepts registrations for systematic reviews, rapid reviews, and umbrella reviews. It does not accept scoping reviews or literature scans. So it's really looking at reviews that are more thorough. It does human and animal studies. So yeah. The next slide, I realize, just has this article that's linked on that slide. That might be helpful to look at. Just a helpful PRISMA reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis statement from 2015, but it could just be helpful to understand systematic reviews more. I mean, there's so much information out there, and you can always look at our guide as a first stop before you go to everything, depending on what you feel like you need to understand more. And this is linked in the presentation as well. So yeah, that's what I just highlighted. That you can go through this as well. And so, as I mentioned, Prospero, it's a prospective registry for systematic reviews. For reviews with at least one health-related outcome, you can check work that's already been done in your area of interest, because it's kind of the worst to know that you're researching something that's already been researched that maybe you could just do an update on, or follow up with that researcher, or refine your search to be a different research question if that's more helpful for you. And you submit after the protocol is finalized and before screening begins. So we do require, if you want a librarian support, a protocol to be written before starting. So search strategy tips, I've mentioned some of these, that you have to have a structured search language. So using mesh or mtree or whatever controlled vocabulary is in a specific database. There are some databases out there that don't have it. So you would just do keywords. They don't have control vocabulary. And you also want to use keywords. So some common limits are for English studies only. You can add English if that's something, if you're predominantly looking in English speaking countries. You cannot narrow searches, at least in PubMed, by country. Unfortunately, it's just been a complicated limitation that we cannot do in the database. If you want to eliminate animal-only studies, you have to add this string, which I know seems a little odd that it's like a not in a not, but if you just do not animals, it could still not, you could still find, okay, not animals. I have to revive myself on this. Animals, not humans. Yeah, so it's kind of like this double negative to make sure you get all human studies, essentially. Inappropriate study design will vary on your clinical question. Maybe you'll be doing a trial for something, and maybe there's something like if that's for treatment, but if it's for something more diagnostic, you might want to do a different type of study design too. So bless. So of course we wanted to be cute, and we called our search service Biomedical Library Expert Search Service. So we call it #bless. And we can help you with your search strategy. What we ask for is co-authorship on the paper, because we not only provide the search strategy in detail, which would be added as an appendix in the publication, but we also write the search strategy portion of the method section for you. Like there might be part of the method section that you would have to write, but that is something that we do because this is something that requires a lot of back and forth between us. We do ask for that in terms of our time. So that basically means that, yeah, like I said, the search strategy is attached and we write that. Before making a request to us for this, I would really consider what your time limitations are. If you want to do this in a month, it's probably not going to happen. I'm just being honest with you. You want to make sure that you at least have a few months that you're giving us. When we get lots of requests, sometimes a lot more at one point than another. It just depends on what's coming to us. And, besides doing this, the librarians have other responsibilities. So we do just need that time to be able to plan for it and to provide you searches. I personally, when I do a search in PubMed, my eyes cannot handle looking at that long search strings for more than an hour or two, because it is just so many ands and nots and quotations. Like it's just a lot to constantly look at. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this in terms of the time limitations. So like I said, I would definitely start with the guide, and I want to show you really quick what it means to make a request, what you would do. So on the homepage of the Systematic Review Guide, you could see this link, Biomedical Library Expert Search Services Portal. You go here, and we use Jira, it's a service desk. So you do have to create a login. It's just literally creating a name and a password. So I'll just do mine for the purpose of showing you. And you could see literature search and IACUC, but so you would do literature search for a systematic review. And then this is where you would make the request. For topic of review, your name, we ask what department you're from, the type of review you're doing, and it could be other ones, but we just ask what it is. We ask if you've written your protocol and link to that, that you upload the protocol. We ask what your time limitations are so that we can prioritize to the best of our ability, how many people on your team, inclusion, exclusion criteria, and this should also be in your protocol and the study design. We ask for any related systematic reviews. That not only helps our search, but also helps us understand what you're trying to research. We ask what the study adds to the field, why this is relevant, which is important for systematic reviews. Then we also ask for relevant references. This helps us look at what keywords and control vocabulary terms that you definitely want. Like if these are ones that would be included in your search, they want to make sure that when we do the search that these are included, that we're not missing. And then we ask which databases you want to use. And this isn't final. This is just something that's in your mind. You can use Embase, which is another very large biomedical database. CINAHL is a nursing and allied health database that could be helpful for certain topics. Then there's PubMed, Cochrane. This looks at reviews, systematic reviews. Cochrane Trials looks at trials. Web of Science. I feel like we don't use Web of Science as much now that we have Embase, but if there's something that's more like biological science related, that could definitely be a good one to use. PsycInfo is a psychology center database. Sociological abstracts, sociology. Global Health has more of a public health and global health lens on things. ERIC, like I mentioned, is an educational database. Ovid Medline is another database that has Medline, and it has a very specific way of searching. I honestly haven't used it as much because by the time I transitioned my roles last year, we had just recently got it. I don't suggest that you search on Ovid Medline. I suggest using Embase or PubMed. It's very not user-friendly, but it's helpful for librarians to do searches because it has certain features, but it's not user-friendly at all. You have to really know what you're doing with it because the interface is in my opinion, I don't really like it. I hope they change it. But we just ask for that in case you wanted to use it. And like I said, if you don't know, it's okay to just kind of click. We just kind of want to get an idea of what you're looking for. We ask if you want to do gray literature. You want to make sure that if you're going to use gray literature that you indicate that. And if you're not, that's fine, but you have to include that as a limitation in your publication. If you want to use a citation management software like EndNote or Mendeley or Zotero, we have EndNote, the desktop version. I believe it's still $70, which is much cheaper than UCLA subsidizes it. I think it's like $350, and you get to use it for life. EndNote Online is for free, but I think you can have multiple libraries within it. You can also use Zotero, which is a free one, but it has limitations with storage, where EndNote has unlimited storage. Mendeley is not one that we provide. I feel like people end up, especially in the health sciences, EndNote is more widely used. And then anything else that you want to tell us about your project, and then we ask for acknowledgement so that we will get co-authorship. And then you create it, and we usually respond within 3 to 5 business days. A librarian will usually email you to say, hey, let's meet and chat about this and talk more about it.
Nisha, can you talk a little bit more about reasonable timelines for something like a rapid review versus a literature review? There was a question in the chat about
I just
rapid
saw
review.
that. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for systematic review, like allow at least 3 months for us to be able to do that. A rapid review could definitely be like a month or 2. And then rapid review could also be something where we tell you like kind of what to do, and you can add, and it can be in consultation back and forth. Like maybe we don't do it for you unless you really need. But if you are really wanting a rapid review, it might be helpful for you to have more control, and we could go through like how to search and also help you if you want to translate it to databases, how to do that. So yeah, so I would say a month or 2, and I would say at least 3 months for systematic review. I mean, I've gone back and forth for 9 months, even up to a year for systematic reviews, depending. It depends also on the team's availability. Sometimes I might have it done, but I'm not hearing back from others because we're all doing lots of things, which is fine, but it can take time, you know, to do that. And it could take time. Like I send the search I mean, there are lots of times that I've sent search results and then I never hear back again. You know, I've done the search because people change institutions, their priorities change. It happens, you know. I've had 2 so far that have been published. So it's definitely possible, but sometimes they do honestly kind of go into an abyss, but it's helpful to at least have that partnership from us. So another thing I wanted to mention is that I'm actually leaving UCLA at the end of July. So that's another reason I put the sciences email, because they can answer questions. And we have other librarians who are trained in systematic reviews aside from myself. So and we usually, when they come in the queue, we usually just look at the workload we have and decide who's picking up what. Sometimes we worked with people before, so we'll say, I'll pick this one up. You know, like I'm the liaison for medicine. We have a nursing librarian. That really doesn't matter when it comes to this. What matters is that we know how to search the database and write about it. We do have liaisons for the purpose of dividing up, duties, but we are all trained to do systematic reviews. Like the nursing librarian and myself, we went to the same training. So yeah. But I did want to let you know that, just because, you'll see me and then you won't suddenly, and I figure you should know why. I think my supervisor for now, Rika Ogawa, it will probably be doing a lot of the stuff for medicine until they hopefully hire someone soon. Our hiring process seems to take a long time, so I don't know how soon that will be. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that, and then open up any space for questions.
I just want to say thank you. That was really, I learned a lot. It's an area I don't know a lot about, and it's very exciting. I'm like, oh, I kind of want to do one of these.
Yeah.
If I dig that up, I'll probably be like, what was I thinking? But
yeah, I mean, it's work. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy doing the search and not going through thousands of articles. Like, that's fine with me, and I'm sure it's the other way for other people that don't want to do the search and are happy going through stuff. So, and I think that's why a team approach is really, really important, because it's a lot of work, so you want to make sure that you have that, so not just support to reduce bias, but just to have support, because it can be a lot. And it's helpful to have other people to bounce ideas off of, depending on how the research is going, et cetera. So yeah. Does everyone know how to request articles through interlibrary loan?
I haven't done it in a long time. I know there is a process. I've always known there is a process, but it's been a while.
Yeah, let me just show that just to.
I have another really quick question that you referenced in the beginning, and I know that I can look this up. You showed something where you can kind of on your website where you explain it, but what's the difference again between the systematic review and the scoping review?
Sure. A scoping review looks at how much information, literally like the scope of the question. It's not looking at, what specifically. So the one I did last year was about, and it was very COVID specific, so there wasn't that much out there. It was about using UV light to sanitize masks as a way, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, the PPE equipment was running out, et cetera. So that's what that was about. So for that one, the scoping review would probably find not much research out there, because this was something that was very new. I mean, not that masks weren't used before, but this was something that was like an extreme situation. So that if that person decided to do a scoping review, he would be trying to look at how much stuff is out there on that topic, not about if UV light actually works to sanitize masks. Does that make sense?
Totally. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I have a really quick question. So if I am hooked up to the UCLA VPN, and then there's an article that says our institution does not have access to this journal, is that when I would use the request form that you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. So, okay. So first of all, make sure this link is on MedNet too. We just have it on our library site to go to PubMed. But when you go to PubMed, I would suggest using that link. If you're on the VPN, it might happen automatically, but not always. But you see how this says CDL IB and CDL? That stands for California Digital Library. That's basically what the UC system uses. So you want to make sure you use the link that's on MedNet, the MedNet homepage, to get to PubMed first of all. And you're on the VPN as well. But yes, so I did a quick, or maybe it didn't go. Oh, this one. So I just know that this is one we don't have. So you always want to make sure if you don't see UCE links, either you're not on the PubMed, the MedNet, that link, or you're not on the VPN. You should always see a yellow UCE links button. So when you go to UCE links, you'll see that this says this item may not be available online. So you want to request this from the library right here. And then what you do is you put your library card number, which is your 9-digit ID number on your card. And then there's one number on the back of your card. So that makes it 10 digits. And I'm just going to put mine because I remember it. At least I think that's what it is. And so then This just asks for a location in case there's a physical book, like a journal. Usually it's not, but you still have to enter it. So you could just say Biomed, put your email here. If you say you won't need it after a certain time, you can put that, you don't have to. I would click send confirmation email just so you have that confirmation that it happened. I feel like that should be default, but it's not. And then click next, and then you click request it. So either you'll get it sent to you within a day or two. It will tell you that maybe we do have it and that you just didn't, there was just a route that you didn't take to find it, and this is where it is. It'll tell you if you do need to physically pick something up. That usually doesn't happen in the health sciences. I don't know if it's ever happened for anyone I've worked with. So yeah, so that's what you do. So if it says no, that nothing's available. So yeah. And we are having a brand new library catalog. This is a totally aside that's going to be launched soon, that all the UCs are looking. So this will change too, probably. But you're typically going to probably be looking straight through PubMed to see, something. So if I just like go back to my diabetes search. You can go through UCE links, but you could also just click on the full text article here. If that doesn't work, you can go through UCE links. Sometimes it has multiple routes to get to articles. Oh, this is interesting. It says not online. So let's see what happens when because we had this thing with Elsevier last couple of years where there was a lot of negotiations and we boycotted them. The whole UC system did. And then we went back to the table and now we have access. So I guess maybe this one we don't. I think I'm on I should be on the VPN, yeah. So don't do this then. So if this happens, then you know to go here and request that item online too. I'm just going to try to find another here. So this says download PDF, so we have access to it. So you don't have to use UCE links. I feel like it can be helpful, especially if like one thing doesn't work and there's multiple routes. Here, there's just one link. Sometimes there's multiple places you can get it from. And sometimes when you click these, it just takes you to the main journal webpage, which I don't know why that happens sometimes. So if there's multiple links, I would just go back and choose another one because it might take you directly to the article, which would be easier. Any other questions like that you want me to show you anything before I stop my share? I can assure you that the team that I work with are just great people. So you are definitely going to be in good hands. And if you did have questions between now and July 30th, you could email me. I'm happy to answer, or you can make a consultation with me too. There's a page. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. This has changed, because of remote, and I haven't been using this as much. So go to the biomedical library, you can get research help, and you could schedule a consultation. This is also in the signature of my email if you wanted to do it with me. And then it shows who everyone is. It has all the libraries. You can choose Biomed, and you do the soonest available if you're in a hurry, or you can pick who you want to do. And like I said, like Bethany does public health and dentistry mostly, but she can easily help you, no problem. So yeah. So yeah, you can do that. And we also have a 24-hour Ask a Librarian service on our website. Just keep in mind that's like an international service. So if it's 2 in the morning, it's not going to be myself or any of my colleagues. It will be someone else. They still have, there's a system where we have each other's like certain information. We cannot access each other's library resources if it's through like a paywall, but we still can help for general things. And sometimes you might be able to get a UC person. It's very possible too. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been really, really useful. I think having this recording will be an amazing resource as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm so glad you recorded, especially for those who can't make it. Yeah, I'm glad it's been helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And feel free to let me know if you have questions.
Thanks, Nisha.
All right, bye.
Bye.